welcome everybody. It's the Monitor Keeping Podcast, and I'm Alan Stevens. We're here for another session. It's going to be our 17th episode today. Also, kind of interesting is that we are now current on these episodes. Kai and I went at it hard, and we were able to record, multiple episodes in advance, and we have dwindled away on our little stockpile. So I think it's kind of cool because the information that you'll be hearing from this point on is current, what's going on right now this week. So it should be some good stuff. So as we get started, I just want to say thank you to Eric over at NPR. And if you guys don't know NPR, it's Morelia Python Radio Network. Go ahead and check out their website. You can find them at moreliapythonradio.com or .net. And go ahead, look at all the podcasts they have on there. They just added one more, I believe. So if there's anybody out there that likes colubrids, it's a new one coming up. There's some existing podcasts out there. There's some great topics that get covered, from species specifics, where, of course, you have Morelia, monitors, and the like, but also history of viticulture, talking to different people that have been around in these different podcasts. And a lot of them span, not only whatever you're into, but just I find it fascinating, the history of how these things came to be. And sometimes a person you didn't even know that works maybe with chameleons had a hand to play in something else down the road. So I'm a big fan of it. If you have time to commute and you want to check out different podcasts, pick one on there, give it a listen. There's a lot of great hosts. And we'll cover more of those in topic towards the end of the podcast. But Kai, how you doing?
Hey man, surviving. No, I'm actually doing really well. Kind of like, I haven't really, I post about it a lot, but I haven't really said a ton as far as, I guess exactly how I feel, but as far as everything with monitor wise, Kimberly's and mangrove stuff is looking on the up and up. I guess last year I failed pretty bad with some of the Kimberly stuff, just as the learning curve goes. Probably killed a good 2 to 3 clutches, give or take, and I almost gave up. And got different animals, different adults, and basically went at it again, this time with better support, better understanding of the animals, and also practicing my incubation methods and different things. Now, most monitor eggs, I'm not gonna lie, they're not that difficult to incubate, compared to like chameleon eggs or something like that, right? They're not that difficult, but the dwarf monitor eggs can be pretty fragile. And so for myself, it's been a real great accomplishment to be able to hatch out Kimberly rock monitors and basically be able to work with and understand completely of a species that I considered my dream pet lizard for however long, and not gonna lie, I kind of have too many right now. I'm almost overwhelmed with how many clutches are in and out and basically hatching and being laid and ready to hatch, all that stuff like that. So yeah, man, I'm kind of in the thick of things. And then, there's also the grasshopper stuff that is basically also keeping me engulfed in work as well. So yeah, man, I can't complain, I'm just really laying it in there. So yeah,
I think it's really awesome. I remember some of those conversations with you about Kim specifically and the wanting to give up and get out of it. I'm glad you stuck through it too. And for all you guys listening out there, this is kind of how the whole idea of this podcast began in the first place. Was Kai and I reaching out to each other, talking about the frustrations and coming up with different ideas and maybe even just a little encouragement. And you're absolutely right, man. Kims are they're amazing. I mean, I think they're everybody's dream as far as Odatria. To some respect, there's some outliers there. There's a lot of cool species, but I mean, what else out there has some how would you even say it? To me, it's like this Superman pastel color palette with a zebra tail.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's the red, the burgundy, the orange, right? That's just
yeah,
the typical tinges, but then there's the grays and that come in between, right? And those
yeah,
grays can look blue sometimes. And then there's like a yellow undertoning and
yeah,
but the black lining and the white like yeah, the black and white almost zebra stripe like it's like yeah, it's an amazing species. But regarding another dwarf monitor, which is why we're here today, is Tristis,
hmm,
Varanus Tristis. Now, there's a couple types, but the other highly desired one is basically. Oh man, can you hear me?
yeah.
Sorry, there's the computer went dark, but yeah, just making sure everything's right. Yeah, but the other highly desired one is the I don't know. There's many names to call it. There's the black-headed monitor, the racehorse monitor, um, but we know them as black-headed monitors typically here.
Hmm.
Um, I myself had some when I was younger, quite a bit actually. I had like 14 or something like that. Now I bought a couple clutches straight off of Doug Price
Yeah.
and wanted my ratios to be pretty high. Don't get me wrong, I kind of jumped into it, um, almost a little bit too headstrong, and ended up buying more animals than I really needed. Obviously, you probably only need like 6 animals, not 14. So I ended up, selling a bunch, figuring out what's what. I think I lost one. Um, yeah, man, they're a fast species. Was
Yeah.
babies, man, they're just pew 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 all over. Um, and they're solid still too. They're like bigger than the Kimberlys, but fast as well. So,
Hmm.
oh, man, I don't know. I just I I missed the opportunity to really work with them. I think I was just too immature, kind of young and dumb with what I was having,
Yeah.
um, and basically raised them for a good year or so. I'd say maybe a year and a half ish, and then right when it gets to the point of figuring out how to breed them or not, I kind of just gave up on them, and I ended up selling them, splitting them up, getting rid of some. Some went to, I think, like a couple went to East Bay. Yeah, I just ended up depleting what I had, wasted the time and the hype too, right? It was basically
Right.
just hyped up for nothing, and um, yeah, man, I really wish I would have taken more learning from them, because I basically bought them before I bought any other dwarf monitors. At the
Oh wow.
time, yeah, at the time, like I've seen Ackies and I've seen other stuff, and don't get me wrong, I was only like 17, 18 at the time, so pretty young, But
Hmm.
I like maybe had Ackies come, ended up basically flipping them, selling them, so they don't really stay for very long at all. Probably only just days or a week or something. But the Tristis I held on to, and I should have really practiced with those at first rather than trying to practice with mangrove monitors or whatever else I was trying to practice with in the later years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and yeah, I could have learned a whole lot from them, but I was dumb about it, and I ended up wasting all that time and money, and still then didn't really understand. All right, now what to do? Just kind of heat them and feed them, but I mean, I should have understood more like nesting, and I knew to use like deep soil, but I didn't know how to hook it up right.
Yeah.
And the basking spot stuff, I was using floodlights because that was the now hip thing to do, and getting a temperature gun, and I got a temperature gun with those guys because basically people were really adamant on using those. That it was basically one of those things that's taught to you as a reptile keeper. Get yourself a temperature gun, learn how to utilize it. It's basically your best friend.
Hmm.
And yeah, I ended up, that's when I got my first temperature gun from Pet Boys, and trying to figure out how to set their enclosure up right. And man, they hid and stayed hidden like 24/7, 23/7, you know. Yeah, just they barely came out. I threw in bugs in there. I put food at the ends, and I didn't really know how to set it up right. I had them in like I had 3 Neodosha cages, right?
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, so and they were the basic 2x2x2s with the chondro bar, right? So
Yeah.
I took out the chondro bar, put a cork bark in there. Now you can picture what my cage looks like, right? And that was it. Maybe a couple logs that went up, and really that was it. I ended up having to like tape the edges because there was a tiny little seam that they can possibly get through because I ended up
Yep.
losing one. Yeah, man, it was horrible setup. So, if the setup was better, I probably would have enjoyed the lizards better.
Yeah.
You and I could have would have set it up things differently. And how I do things now, obviously, is much different than what I did back then. And so, um, yeah, really, really wasted that opportunity there.
Man.
Yeah,
It's funny. You talk about getting a clutch from I got a clutch back in the early 2000s from Doug Price also. Um, and at the time, my experience was with Ackies and Gouldai, Flavies, and I'm trying to think of anything else that I had or I came into possession of was already subadults or adults. So, um, and even my Ackies when I acquired them, I never really started with like babies. I think they were at least 2, maybe 3 months old when I had gotten them. So that was my experience. When I got this clutch from Doug, I think they were 4 weeks old or so, and I hadn't had that set of skills in me yet to care for babies that were so small. I remember getting them and like, wow, not realizing because I had at that point I had never seen fresh babies. I had never hatched out my own, and to see
yeah,
the size of them, and now what I had for them was a 4-foot cattle trough, and we're
yeah,
talking, you know, yeah, we're
right,
talking 5-inch lizards or so.
right.
And so I, excuse me, I could also get away with the Yakkies with dumping some crickets in there and feeding them every other day or so. Um, it was the only issue that I ever had with siblings or monitors eating another monitor was with baby
Yeah,
Tristis, and fully my fault. I might have spent like 2 days. We have hungry growing babies that need to eat every day, and my own stupidity and lack of experience at the time, I figured they were similar to my sub adults and adult other animals. And man, I came in one day and there was the head and there was the tail and there was just an empty spine connecting the two. Just had the bones in there,
yeah,
and I had never seen anything like that. I was like, these things are little savages.
yeah, yeah. When I lost mine, right, Lance Payton was telling me, he's like, yeah, one probably ate the other one.
Yeah,
Because I looked everywhere for it, but my house, the place I was living in at the time, there was a ton of nooks and crannies. It could have went anywhere, you know.
yeah.
So I don't know.
But
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it can fit in another baby's mouth, but
oh, it's definitely in their natural history. I mean, so Tristis, we don't see a lot of them. For the listeners out there, it might be the first time you're actually really hearing about Tristis or the hooded goanna, black-headed goanna. They, for whatever reason, they haven't ever really hit that mainstream kind of like with the same mystique as the Kimberleys or
until
everybody
now,
else. Packies. Yeah, they're starting to,
yeah, they're
and they
starting to hit stream now.
yeah, they definitely have a place because one, they are the largest of the Odatria, the dwarf monitors that we have access to in the U.S. The largest being Glebo Palma. It tops out the
Glebo
Odatria
Palma.
family. Mm-hmm.
Glebo Palma. That's the very highly desired dwarf monitor.
Oh man,
But
they're
we don't
awesome.
have any here. So
No, Unfortunately, it would be cool if one day we do get a crack at those, because they are well, for go check them out if you never heard about them before. You can look up the black palmed monitor. They're really unique looking. They're really cool. They're a kind of a mixture. They're their own thing. They're a mixture of different looks, and they definitely get some good size on them. But as far as in the U.S., the largest we have is the Tristis. So you're talking about a good, healthy size adult that it can give a good bite too. I mean, if
Yeah.
my big guy wasn't so friendly, he could, if he wanted to lay into me and get a hold of me, especially do that bulldog kind of bite, like some of the Odatria
Yeah.
will sometimes.
Yeah, they're a pretty solid looking animal when you post your adult males and stuff. Pretty
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. So I never raised mine to that size. I only really had them a good year and a half ish, and so they were still pretty. Where they all kind of look female look.
Oh yeah.
They didn't have that bulbous look, that bulbous head look. Where yeah, not at all. And then the looks of them. There's kind of different ones. I think
Hmm.
not to say that they were exactly um, the species that we're going to be talking about, but they're a little bit more reddish, like Varanus Tristis orientalis. A little bit
Yeah.
more brownish, not exactly ending up with the black dominant head like you would normally see in some of the not in this. There's not very many of them in America for sure, but the ones, if you were to look up like black-headed monitor from Australia, man, they look way different.
Oh
Almost,
man.
yeah, almost just the tones alone. It's like
Yeah.
ours are basically washed out somehow. So
Yeah. Now
the
I've seen some nice ones. I think we have, with the line breeding, we can definitely enhance some colors. But man, if you're talking about like so there's this classic picture in one of the books, um,
yeah
where you have this animal, and to describe it, it's jet black from the neck up to the head, and then it's jet black from the tail base,
yeah
just above the tail base down. I mean,
yeah,
jet black, and then in
and
the
it has
middle,
small little freckles in between all that. That's
right?
it. Yeah,
It's like on this burnt orange background, with the one I recall has those like really bright gold ocelli, or the
yeah.
pattern in there on that burnt orange background. And man, yeah. I looked at that thing, I was like, man, that is one of the most awesome lizards I've ever seen. And but you're right, in the US we got a lot of different, it's almost a washed out look to that compared to
Yeah.
that. We're talking, I mean, that could be said for a lot of animals in the wild that you see
Just
when they're all heated up and ready to
yeah,
go.
they're just not as black. They're like a grayish brown.
Right.
Yeah, and so some people would consider not being one or the other. But yeah, that's another thing, and we've talked about this before with other species that where you cross different localities or different types of the same type of animal.
Yeah.
Then you basically don't end up with a pure type of locality and all that stuff like that. And then you have uh, problems down the line when someone wants to figure out how to breed them, figure out the genetics, figure out what's what, and try to basically have a more
See,
I
but
would
there's
say
also
stronger look.
there's also the fact that maybe we didn't even start with that same. I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
about pictures in a
true.
magazine. They're the best of the best.
Right.
Maybe the animals that we got started with were they are what they are, and they look like what we have access to, because Tristis, they cover a huge range in Australia. They're one of
Yeah.
the most common types of monitors. Um, so you got to imagine this huge continent, and you can find Tristis in so many different places, so many different terrains and microhabitats, um, that I've seen wild caught animals, or pictures of wild caught animals that look exactly like the stock we have here, down to like the more maroon head, then into the black neck, kind of blackish dark gray neck, and they look spot on what our stock is and what we have access to. And then but then you start looking at more pictures of where they butt up with, we're talking Varanus Tristis, and then where they butt up into Varanus Tristis orientalis, and then you go into the more Varanus Tristis orientalis range, and you have smaller animals overall size, but the colors on some of these things are like this really nice light gold, light
reds.
Yeah. It's totally different than what we've ever had access to, even for the amount of the original orientalis that were here years and years ago. And then I don't know about you guys, but I follow some of the Australian guys, and especially the ones that do wildlife photography and whatnot, or they're just they like to get out and field herp. And some of the animals they take pictures of or they catch, it's just like, well, I don't really know how to describe this one, but here's a cool looking tristis. And one, who knows if it's even a tristis? Maybe it's more along the lines of like scalaris or a type of tree monitor, but there's such a variation out there in Australia. I think tristis, because of their range, they pretty much probably rival the sand monitor, the Gouldii family, as far as all the different looks and whatnot you could probably see and achieve out there. So, but we're talking over there, and we have what we have here.
Right. So now, how many do you have currently now?
Sorry. So I have 1.2 adults, and I have a holdback pair. Well, I would say they're now adults. And then I'm currently just in the room next to me now. I'm raising a small group. Those are they already have homes they're going to. And then I have one more at the warehouse that was kind of just more of a struggling baby, doing fine now, but it took a little longer to grow. It should be about twice its size. And I'm not exactly sure what the deal with that baby was, but it got separated. It's now locked on. It's feeding well. I believe it's a male, even though it's still pretty small. But that animal will probably just hang out with me. It'll be more of a pet. If I find no, I better be careful what I say. But it'll probably hang out for a while. I want to be able, if I'm getting animals out there, I want people to be absolutely happy, no problem. Get those animals that are just, bulletproof. This guy took a little more work. And actually, we were just talking about that with Kim's too, Kai. You just have sometimes those animals, they just need a little extra care. We expect sometimes monitors, because of what they are, to be so bulletproof, and a lot of times they are. But every once in a while, you run into one that just needs a little more help. So that would be this guy. So that's my Tristis group right now. I am expecting another clutch here from one of my females, and I'm gonna get that holdback pair, a little more size on them. I'm feeding them pretty aggressively right now. I just started, and they'll be in the mix here pretty soon. They're really, really great looking animals. But so everybody knows, also, Tristis go through a color change. So when they're babies, they start off, they have these like almost bright, kind of orangish red heads, and kind of a darker black and white kind of body. And as they grow, that black and white over even a month, 2 months, starts to turn into these really nice, like pastel gray and blue colors with that reddish orange color. They lighten up a whole lot from their baby colors. And I think that's where some of the confusion sometimes comes, when people think they have orientalis, or they have possibly mixed babies. I don't think that's necessarily it could be the case, but I think what is actually going on, just from raising a few now, is that they have this lighter color. I don't know if it's an adaptation for them and when they're younger for what they hide in and whatnot, but they definitely hit a point where, and it's not necessarily tied to sexually mature animals because I can easily sex the ones that I have, but it's more of just an age and size, in my opinion, that they start to darken up and get those really classic, colors on them. So mine are just there. They're knocking on that door. The other thing about the Tristis is they're easy to sex. The males have a spur cluster on the side that is unmistakable. Now, it's not that females won't have that spur cluster. Also, I have a female that has some pretty large spurs, but if you were just looking at her as like a one-off, it might give you some hesitation. But as soon as you put her next to the male, there's no hesitation whatsoever. Males get a really nice broad head, broader neck, overall body is just heftier. Then you go down to the spur clusters, which are obviously there, and older. I would say older. Once you get like a good 2 years on the animal, I noticed that the tail starts to really thicken up in the middle. It's like this big reserve pocket and it kind of looks like a lump in the tail in that mid upper section. And I think there's some other animals out there that'll do that. I can't think of them off the top of my head. You don't really see it with the Ackies because of the spiny tail, but there's something I'm thinking of where I don't know. Do your Indicus do that at all? Do the males get that like lump in the tail?
No, like you mean no.
I'll try to. So if you're listening and you want to check it out, I will. I'll get a picture and post it on the on my Instagram about what I'm talking about. And I think older females can get it too. I've seen it in some sand monitors. It's kind of just this unique look. It almost looks odd when you first see it, but it's just really indicative of a male. When you have that male next to a female, they can be really easy to sex. And I think my holdback pair, they were about 6 months old, 7 months old, and it was pretty unmistakable which one was which. So yeah, they're great animals to work with, and I guess we'll get into their care a little more. But how old were yours, Kai, when you started? Or how old did you get them to before getting out of the project?
Maybe only like a good year and a half, and
Yeah.
I didn't even witness anything because they stayed hidden so much. I barely even saw them. So, if anything, it was more of like empty cage syndrome. And I would throw in bugs and throw in pieces of meat at the entrance of the burrow, and it'd be gone later. So I didn't really see them. I forget who I sold them to, but it was some lady in San Diego. I think I sold it like a possible 1.2. It looked like it to me, yeah. Yeah, man, they're. I don't know. I will wish I was able to witness them more. I think they were not hot enough, not humid enough. Essentially, just in the cork burrow. You know what I mean?
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they stayed hidden. Just back then we we were still figuring a lot of things out. So
Yeah, I didn't really, from an enclosure like that with the lamp outside compared to an enclosed cage with the lamp inside, it's just much different. I'm even using that right now where I actually have two setups. One is kind of like more of a fail proof for the babies. I know it works. The temperatures, the bulb, what it does, it makes them grow, shed well, all that, right? And then I have, a glass one that I rigged up, and the glass one basically needs much more heat, even within the same vicinity in the area in the room. They're not holding, or the glass one isn't holding as well as the wooden one. So, like let's say I only use a 25-watt nano bulb in the 2x2 raise up for the baby Kimberlys, right? But
Yeah.
but the glass one is a slightly smaller, shorter cage, and I actually have to use more wattage in it, which is yeah. So
Hmm.
yeah, man, the enclosures and everything now on how I do stuff comparable to what I used to do is just like it's like night and day. You know, I was just
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
keeping leopard geckos or something like that back in the days compared to what we're doing now. Um, yeah, so I'm hoping that I would say getting the Tristis and all that stuff like that, and what it taught me was how to really be aware of dwarf monitors. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, just the whole escaping and all that stuff like that, and that was I think a major part on why I didn't um, end up hanging on to them so long, and then even getting the Kimberleys like that was a jump 10 years later. You know,
Yeah.
where it's like all right. Like they're your favorite species. You really like them, but I mean, are you adequate enough, or do you have the ability to keep them and such like that? And so,
Hmm.
yeah, it was just way different. And yeah, I was even surprised that Doug Price even let me buy all those. You know, I was just like, yeah, I'll take them all, and he's like, all right, and
Yeah.
yeah, man, it was just. And I had a ton of babies, man, and I don't even know what I was really even wanting to do with him.
Yeah.
So yeah. Uh, I had one have like this really nice reddish tone on his head. Like I really
Hmm.
wanted him, right, and it had like a tiny stripe, a little dorsal stripe right on the neck. Only on the neck area though.
Interesting. A dorsal stripe. I'm
It
trying to
was
picture what it would look like.
super faint. It was more
Yeah.
so like yeah, it was just. But it stood out to me, and I was like, "Oh, this male is really pretty," you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ended up not. I ended up like not wanting to sell them because I remember I was telling the lady, and this was like on VNet or something like that, right? On
Uh-huh.
Varanus.net,
Oh
and
yeah.
so I remember telling her I was like, I think I'm gonna give you a refund. I basically came back from wherever I was at, and I told her I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to really sell them yet, because I don't know. I was basically just back and forth with shit, back and forth
Yeah.
with essentially what I wanted to do with them. Um, but yeah, just I ended up, I think she was really set on them and also excited about them, and I was like, all right, what am I gonna really do with them at this point, right?
Hmm.
I couldn't hang on to them, and I was basically failing with monitors for how much ever long, so I basically just kept the money, right, rather than returning it and then hanging on to the animals longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you do a lot of young and dumb stuff when you get monitors at a young age. You just some stuff is impulsive, whether you want to
Oh yeah.
admit it or not. Some stuff
I
is like,
got that.
oh, it's cool, and I can afford it, but a lot of people can't even mentally keep stuff.
Maybe
So
we'll do a mistake show and we'll air it
what,
all out because
what not to do? What
right
have we done? How many
and
times can you mess up?
avoiding the pitfalls too. Just the ideas that kind of creep into your head sometimes
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
about getting ahead of yourself and because I did that with monitors too, and
Yeah,
it set me back quite a
right.
lot.
I mean, what we're exactly talking about is like buying too many monitors, basically.
Mhm.
More biting off more than you can chew. Realizing like if you buy a bunch of small stuff, sure, it's small. I mean, I'm not even talking about dwarf stuff. I'm talking about baby monitors that get a good size.
Yeah.
It's like anything that gets 3 to 4 foot plus. So basically that's if you're talking about an entertainment system in your house or a big unit in your house, that's a big cage in your house. And so
Hmm.
if you want to have multiples of those, I often see many people buy monitors ending up tapping out within the first year because everything has grown so well. I mean, they love the animals, they took care of them really well, but they outgrew them. The
Right.
animals outgrew the people, and you end up pawning them off, selling them, neglecting them, whatever that comes into play when these animals basically outgrow somebody. And so, yeah, to keep people from, you know, from that, it'd be to be wise to just really think about the future of the next several years for what you got.
That's a hard thing to do. And I think,
Yeah.
monitors lend themselves towards kind of the mindset of social media glory. And back then we didn't even have social media. When we were doing some of that, it was forums and whatnot. But because of what monitors are capable of, if they're supportive, it's sometimes you get this idea, and we all want to be successful, especially if your aspirations are to breed. You want to be successful, but as a young kid, sometimes that takes precedence over actually raising and providing for and going through the natural learning process with the animal to get there. And yeah, man, maybe we will do that. I'm talking about it right now. I'm like, ugh, kind of that pain in the stomach of all the
Yeah, it's all
stupid stuff
it's
I've done.
all the stuff that makes you cringe.
Yeah,
Like keeping monitors in mesh cages
yeah,
or glass cages or under just I would say what I see a lot of people do is underestimate the hell out of their monitor.
oh yeah,
Underestimate their capabilities, their intelligence, how sneaky they are, all that stuff. They're just. I mean, for my
yeah.
for my animals, luckily now everything's in locked cages. But before I was, they were able to slide the glass just by getting their nails in there. They can wedge a finger and then just hook the other glass, and
Yes,
that's.
a monitor will slide a cage open, just for people wondering. That's honestly, that's one of the reasons I went to. I like the swinging doors, like exoteric cages, and I like. Well, I do use a few sliding glass things, but I have locks on the sliding, like the jewelry case locks on the
Yeah, it's only
sliding
for the
glass
bigger
doors.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have walked in and there's an Aki sitting on the ground looking at me, or a Tegu, or I've had a snake get its tail in there, and I don't even know how it did it, but it slid that glass open because I looked at the cage and the glass is open. Um, so
You ever
I,
have, you ever have
huh?
like dwarf monitors slide through the glass
Oh yeah.
or Tristis
Oh,
or
so I do not, with babies, I do not use sliding glass. Okay. Um,
same?
that middle part where the doors meet, you need to put some serious weather stripping, something in there. Do yourself a favor, because imagine a monitor. If you're gone for half a day at work, at school, whatever you got to do, and it can get its nose, the front part of its nose in between those sliding glass doors, it has all day to test that. And a monitor can flatten itself out so much, it will just, I mean, like millimeter by millimeter, start the sliding process to get through. And fortunately, glass doesn't flex, but if you're using acrylic, man, acrylic flexes, so that monitor will figure out how to slide its body between those doors if there's even just barely enough room. And there's nothing worse than save yourself the trouble, get ahead of it. You will. I've spent hours and days looking for lost animals, to the point where, yeah, I made the decision for babies. There's no sliding glass. It's
Yeah.
all swing open doors that I can lock.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And it's like not even when you're not paying attention, right?
right.
Um, mm, let's say when you're just getting in there doing cage maintenance stuff and you're opening the door and boom, it just takes a leap on you. And
Mm-hmm.
then you gotta like chase after it, do whatever. That's like the worst part, and that's what I was having trouble with the Tristis. I basically if I had the cage open too long, they'd take off. So I would just launch in bugs in there, and that's it. But
Yeah.
so with the Kimberlys that I have now, relation, we're just bouncing back and forth on how to kind of keep them right. If anybody's trying to keep Tristis when you're looking at them in the future, I mean, if let's say you get a medium one or a large one, it's easy to keep in any cage almost. But when you're keeping babies, man, I basically have latch cages now, so they're just a solid front. It's a wooden enclosure, and the glass front is stable, so it doesn't move, doesn't slide, doesn't do anything. And you're able to only open the cage through an access top, and then through there, you're then limited through how much space they can actually get out. You can kind of control the area a little bit better rather than opening a whole front of an enclosure and having them just pop out on you. Don't get me wrong, you can make it useful, and you got to be careful 100% of the time, which sucks. You want to. I mean, not everybody is careful 100% of the time, and some people are this and that, or they're tired or not paying attention, or they got 100 other things to do as well, that you kind of just want to make this quick, where you're just popping in something, lift up the latch, throw in some bugs, and that's it. But if you gotta be all super cautious about every single time opening this enclosure, it kind of makes keeping a hassle rather than anything else.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is for keepers out there, there comes that choice when you have that split second and the animal is coming out of the cage, and you might not have the most well established history with that animal. You might be a little scared, but before that animal hits the ground and escape, go hands on. Take the bite if you have to. Believe me, even if they bulldog you for a good 10 minutes and it hurts, it is better than hours and hours of looking, and the pain you feel in your gut of losing that baby. Take the bite, even if it's a full grown, I would say full grown dwarf monitor. If it's a bigger monitor, you might want to pick your battles. But a full grown dwarf monitor, take the bite. That's my opinion. I go hands on as soon as something's running towards the door. If it's inescapable, I've developed very fast hands, but I've had a lot of things get out on me, so I've had some practice now. So get good at catching lizards. Get those fast hands. Don't be shy. Their tails don't come off. They're pretty durable. I'm not saying squish them into the ground or anything, but you can apply a little pressure to a monitor, and it will more than likely be fine. Little babies, of course, you're like a little skeptical of, but also go into your cage smart. Like I like using exoterras for babies. I have I actually have a lot of top opening cages, but I have had animals that when they're running around in a top opening cage, jump onto my arm and run up my arm and out. So I've had to get fast at that. Tristis do that a lot to me. They see that they see that escape, and that, man, yeah, I had to get pretty good at it.
Chasing a lizard, chasing a dwarf monitor. All right, so the first time I had to chase one, I went and we basically ripped apart my place where I lost the Tristis. Obviously, I didn't want to lose that, so we ended up still looking for it. Looked around the house, up underneath, like the place that we're living at. I even moved the washer and dryer, everything, right? Basically, just try to close off stuff, tape off stuff. Even put like baby powder on the floor to see if it was walking through entrances. That was like the worst idea because getting it up is a pain. So yeah, and then with the Kimberly, my first ever Kimberly that I lost, man. Okay, so I had an Exoterra, and it was basically like a skyscraper one. So it's like maybe like 30 inches tall by 16 by 16, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't huge, but it was still tall enough, and I thought it was great flight distance enough where it would, he wouldn't be able to get out or anything like that. But it actually just darted on the gap as I was opening the door. As you open the door, the very edges, this leaves this gap there. As the door opens wider, the gap gets bigger, and so it ran and got into the gap area. And you can't just smash it closed, because you're just going to smash the lizard. It's basically tiny, fragile. The tail tips and toes are like lead pencil thin, so
Yeah.
even thinner than that, and so you can just break it just like that. And so I obviously didn't do anything other than let it run, right?
Yeah.
Because I thought I could just catch it on the rebound, but it went underneath this refrigerator, the small little fridge, and it was a tiny fridge. So I actually took this thing outside, ripped this refrigerator apart, man. It was not a brand new one, but it was a really good working fridge that we bought not too long ago, and so I shouldn't have ripped open the fridge, but there it went, a couple $100 or something like that down the drain. And just I took off the doors, bro, turned it upside down, took off like whatever motor thing was there, removed that, try to get in any little crevice. I even like poured water into crevices to see if it'll come up. Yeah. It wasn't even in there. It was in the restroom. It had somehow got into the restroom, and I saw it running underneath this crack in this cabinet where it just basically lifts up a little higher than the rest of the floor, and I snagged it by its tail and its back leg. Yeah, man. Chasing dwarf monitors is not fun.
So take the bite. Catch the monitor, get fast hands, take the bite. You'll save yourself hours and hours and so much heartache. And reaching out on all the forums and Facebook pages and watching all the YouTube videos of how to catch lost animals. You'll try to set up like traps and all this stuff. You'll be thinking you'll have baby powder all over your house. Take the bite.
Yeah. And so it's worth it to get. They don't really make enclosures like how I described. I actually had to make one. I had to have one made specifically for me by my friend at Reptile Hut. And basically it's just that it has a bigger latch door, and that was where I can get in your furniture, and it's just the top latch door. So let's picture 3/4 of the top is you can lift it up, and then on the inside of that, like centered in there, is the smaller latch door that can also lift up, and that's where I do the daily enter water cups and feeding and throwing this and that, and I can even get in my arm in and out, but I can't take in large pieces of furniture that I would need to do,
Right.
Yeah.
What I really like? For before you get to the step, if you're keeping dwarf monitors, I guess specifically in this one, you can do it with other animals you're raising up, but we a lot of times reference the exoterras just because I think they're the main. They came out with the first cage. Then Zoomed and Zilla came out with cages also that were front opening, more of like a reptile cage than a aquarium. But if you're familiar with the exoterras, they're great front opening cages, but the top doesn't come off that easy. It wasn't built for top access. But there are other ones. There's I don't have any affiliation with Zilla or anything, but they do have their front opening cages that they provide a little more. There's some different options on top where you can put your lights, and you can also have a smaller door up on top, so you don't have to open the front if you don't want to, and you can get in there and do things, and the chance of an animal escaping is really slim. And so I really like their design. They have some decent sizes, and I think for raising up dwarf monitors, it'd be a really good idea if you are going into having to buy a new cage to start off with. And one of the other things I like I guess I'll just touching on this stuff is I have no problem using your standard 20 gallon like aquarium. But I like personally the ventilation that comes through that strip that's right below the doors on like the
Yeah,
Exoterras and the Zillas.
it
And
brings
so,
just enough.
right. For
Yeah,
me, for my purposes, I like the way that the cool air comes in through the door, then it comes up, of course, goes up through the top. You got good ventilation. You can cover the top portion to a certain extent. You still want airflow, but you can reduce the amount of ventilation. But it's important to have access for cool air to come into the cage, and it helps keep that top layer of the substrate dry, which is important with raising, especially babies with their fragile toes and tail tips. Um, and then I get the choice of spraying the cage down during the day, but it also allows it to dry off because there's such good ventilation. So just a little plug, something for people to think about, or if you're making your own, it's possibly worth it to incorporate some of these ideas. There's a reason they put a vent at that point in the cage. So I guess just real quick, I would throw that out there, something to think about. And I really do like the way those Zilla cages are set up. The Zoom Eds aren't that bad either. They have some great front opening cages, but I think you're left with it's like a dual door up on top, so you can open half, you can or half at a time. And the way you have your lights set up might become kind of it's a hassle when you always have to move lights to get access if you need to go through the top. So that's kind of why I like the way that one's set up. So little rant, but just something to think about if you're looking at cages, you're looking at pictures, and you're thinking about getting possibly a new dwarf monitor, and you're wondering what would be a good idea to start with, especially if you can find one on a local marketplace or
yeah.
Facebook,
Like
But
I hate to just let everybody fend for themselves, but I always gotta ask people like, hey, what are you gonna keep this in?
mhm,
Because I mean,
yeah,
I really want to avoid the conversation of, hey, I just lost it. What do I do?
right,
Or or the other one is like, you have another one. I'm like, these are not easy to replace, man. Like
right,
I had to cry and pray so this thing can actually hatch out. And so, it's like I don't do that often.
yep,
um, and so it's just things to be aware of. It's just like I don't know, with like tiny little snakes, keeping little colubrids and making sure that the little tray as you're sliding in and out has that gap closed. So very
hmm
similar to this here. You're just making sure that you're aware of the animal's capabilities to sneak in and snug in and escape, basically. Um, yeah, I have exoterras on my little baby cages for those ones that I use. Now I have a couple ways to rig the top to the exoterras where they work. It really just depends on how well the humidity is being held in that cage, or sorry, also in that room too. But sometimes I'll cut out. It's only a quarter-inch thick of plywood to fit the top, and then I'll basically drill a hole through and run the wires through and hook up a socket. That right there is
hmm
very. I like that method of keeping them, but there's also the front entrance issue. So I've eliminated now and gone to my current status. But I also I still have extra cages that I need to use in a whim, and obviously just using a normal exochair the way it is isn't going to be cutting it for what I need to do because it's so dry where I live. So I actually need to conserve humidity a bit more. I also still have the lamp where I'm gonna set it, and then have laminated cardboard or whatever basically fit on top of that Exoterra lid,
yeah,
keeping the integrity of the shape of the original build, but just modifying it a little bit so it releases moisture a little bit less.
yep. These are all things that we've had to experiment with and figure out what works with us. But if you're keeping monitors, believe me, you'll be a problem solver. If you're going to be successful, you'll figure things out. You'll have a problem, and this is usually how it goes for me. You'll have a problem. You'll look for the information that's already out there. You'll ask some questions. But at the end of the day, if no one is quite in your situation, you just got to think, okay, this is the problem. I know what the answer is. How do I get there? And then you're going to do it. So if that's making a top or if that's making adjustments, however you need to make them, welcome to monitor keeping. You will figure it out. Excuse me, I'm still choking on things. So I guess I'll let people in. We were a little late on recording, so I think we usually put out episodes on Saturdays. We didn't have one out this Saturday for two reasons. One, we had Mike Stefani on again for our round two, and it got messed up and it was unsalvageable. But you can also catch a great episode with Mike on NPR, talking to Eric and Owen about mainly Kimberly's and Ackies. And so I'll throw that little plug out there real quick. Mike's a great guy. Believe me, we'll have Mike on again, and he's going to be around. But the other reason also is I came down with the COVID, man. And I disappeared for like 2 weeks. So my wife got it first, and then I was a few days after her, and it hit me hard. And I got delirious for a few days or parts of days. And fortunately, all the babies were fine. I would stumble over there. I would, throw some crickets in a bag, shake them up, and throw them in there. Make sure some things had at least water. May have taken a fall or two getting around because I was just pouring sweat, and it's like I remember one time I was trying to do stuff over there, and I was gearing up for it all day, and I was walking through the warehouse, and it's like the ground was just getting closer until I found myself on the ground. I was just like sweating my ass off. And then I think I fed him. I went home. I slept for like 12 hours. Part of probably why I was delirious is I was probably forgetting to eat and drink water, just sleeping. But yeah, that's why we were a little behind. So thanks for being patient with us. And, we'll be back on it now. I'm immune now, so I'm bulletproof. Or so they say. We'll see. There'll be some new variant to come up and bite me in the ass. Being sick with monitors, man, that doesn't work too well. Especially when you got to go.
Especially when you got babies. Yeah, man.
No, what killed me was I tried to walk into the sand monitor enclosure, right? And that heat and humidity hit me in the face. I think I almost passed out right then. There would have been some news story about how some crazy guy's monitors ate him.
Yeah. For me, it's like when I'm incredibly sick, right? And I still have to do stuff. I basically do stuff for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then I get exhausted, right? It's the heat, the humidity, but then also typically when I'm sick, my health is like tied with my asthma. So it's like, bro, if you're basically having trouble breathing, it's basically bad for you because you're gonna be so fatigued and strained all the time, right? Yeah. And basically I'll strain for 5 minutes. I can strain for a little bit, take a sip of water, hit my inhaler, and then go back out and then come back in like maybe 30 minutes later, finish up some stuff. But man, when I'm sick and I'm dead, I try to do things like once a day and then just leave stuff alone, but it's really hard now that I have the grasshopper stuff.
The
but
bugs,
also, the bugs are pretty demanding, but the actual, I would say the actual digging up nests and stuff like that and paying attention is like, if I miss a couple of days or even like a weekend or a week's worth of stuff, I'm a little bit off track on what's been going on. Sometimes I really pay attention because I'm there like all the time and I can see what they do almost day and night, even if they're out at the nighttime or if they're digging or whatever. I'm essentially there,
you say that. I outside of monitors, I also of course keep some snakes, and I I noticed I had a female python go super late. So first off, I was already behind the curve. I wasn't expecting her to go at all. I mean, like super late. But then I got sick, and of course, my wife's still sick. I was trying to take care of her. We have the kids. I was trying to do my best just to keep up with life. And I did not set her up right. I mean, she had a very basic enclosure. And I failed to really give her a nesting area. So she held on to those eggs probably for a few days longer than she should have. Lost the whole clutch. It would have been a great clutch, but I have to chalk it up to, at least I didn't lose the animal. It's a bummer, that she went through that process, that I had supported her to get to that point, that, there was a plan to it, but came down with the sickness, and there was a few things. I won't get into all of them, but a few things that happened that kind of just it sucked. I did lose one animal, but this animal was kind of struggling. At this point anyway, it was a constant care type of animal situation. So I did lose one animal. Just because I couldn't keep up with the daily everything. But that in the clutch, I think I got out pretty good considering the babies needed to eat every day. One of the reasons I actually brought the group of Tristis home is so they were right next to me, so I could get a little stash of crickets and roaches.
Started doing what I was telling you, man. Everything's gotta be, the baby's got to be by you, because they're obviously what we worked for. The adults are a lot more hardy. They've already been in that situation, but the babies have to they need that kind of not round the clock care where you're tending to them every hour, every minute at all. Not like that, but you're kind of peering in more often than if they were at a shed outside or like that. Yeah. That's why babies are close. Babies right near, for me, the incubator and the babies are essentially in the room or in the room right next to me. The adults, though, are in the far room furthest away from me.
Yeah.
And so.
On that note, too, the Tristis, they're here. It's always been Ackies here, so it's fun to have something else in the house. But they are coming up on a month old, and they're going to be going to new homes pretty soon. And here any day, the first clutch of Peacock monitors are going to hatch, and they're coming home. They're going to be here.
Nice, man.
I can't wait.
That's a great redemption from what you did to my other stuff.
Wait, what? Oh, from the first clutch of eggs that I nuked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. This has been a while coming, so I'm really happy, and it's from really two great looking animals. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how these babies progress. And I want to keep them at the house just because the noises, being around the family, the kids, they're shy monitors, but these are captive bred monitors. So I want to see how their progression will be when they're kept here in this situation. Because I mean, nothing would be better than these. You want to talk about a stellar looking monitor? What these Peacock monitors are available, or what they're capable of achieving as far as color.
From when they start. When they start to what they end up, it's your end. You got two monitors. It looks like.
Oh yeah.
I
have a few that they look like sunsets, man. That's the best way I can describe them.
So the ones that you post, but now let's just say the gentleman that we talked about this in the last one, but a gentleman that just hatched out some. So his right now look black and white.
Oh
they look like something else. You would never think, oh, that's Offenbergi.
Right.
Or that's Varanus Tristis, or whatever it is. It looks like a Scalaris of something else.
Right.
And or more so, you would think that's Similis,
Right. Very much true.
And because of the colors are key. But you would think the actual ontogenic part wouldn't become blue and red and sunset orange and yellows. The arm flanks, the neck flanks are all yellow and orange. And that brings out the red and blue, which on a dwarf monitor, if you were to think about it, no other dwarf monitor looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
With reds and blues on the same lizard. You know, there's blue lizards and there's red lizards and there's the in between, but rarely ever are there both on the same one.
Right.
And you know, I would put that as a very high demand lizard, even if it was only a $75 lizard 5 years ago. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, there was there's a lot of history on like the what was considered Timor monitors and then blue spot Timors, and then how often Burgai came to be as far as Peacock monitor. But I hope to, with this, this small clutch that I have, really um, post pictures and put it out there for people to see their progression of what babies turn into, and the kind of colors they're capable of, and also just kind of showcase the animals themselves, because I really think that they have a really bright future in captivity. And I think once we get almost lines established, not only for color, but when you start captive breeding down the line, I believe that it really adds into the animal's overall tractability. And so to be able to experience more of the dwarf monitor world, especially, so that not everybody can keep a water monitor, but dwarf monitors are a good size. And to be
yeah.
able to expand out of Australia and into what else is out there is really where some of my excitement is, especially for the hobby. Hopefully there's other people out there that feel the same way. Um,
It's that part of the world. All of our favorite animals come from there. It's
yeah.
Australia curves up, and
Yep.
even New Caledonia and all those smaller Micronesian islands. Yeah, Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is hotspot
Yeah.
still to this day.
Oh man, there's so many undescribed things out there. I have a feeling there's quite a few more dwarf monitors, either species, subspecies, or localities that.
Very small localities, small
Right.
like ranges where it's like an island or part of one island,
Right.
not all over the island.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to get over there too and see with my own eyes. A lot of times we get stuck looking at books and what other people see, and we get stuck with the animals, the lines, the blood that we have over here, and we make up all these almost like facts in our heads about what these animals are and where they come from. And Kai, I'm guessing you know this very well with the work you've put into talking to other people in the world just with Indicus. But
Yeah.
I think that is such a disservice. It's just we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the eyes on to see, what else is going on over there. We're talking about areas where an animal can be different on the coast, and it can have different habitats, different diet on the coast, but it exists there. But it also exists 20 miles inland, and it's either the same species or a subspecies. And we only get what we get over here in the hobby. And you have to understand that these are still very remote places.
Yeah.
You're
Where you
usually
can die getting there. Like the villagers will kill you getting there.
right. And there's no point for if we have to understand that like a lot of the imports that we're seeing, these are being caught by locals, by local kids.
Yeah.
They're still within the populated areas. They're not crazies necessarily like us, where they want to go 20 miles into the
Yeah,
jungle.
a small island, and you'd have to actually get
Right.
actual reliable people. That's the one thing is reliability. You get somebody that's gonna not screw you over, not hurt you, or take your money. Basically leave you out stranded because you'll die out there.
Right.
That's how remote some of these places are. And then you have to look. Okay, when in our cages, it's simple. In our even in our trees here, which are not that tall, right? The dense forest out there, you'd have to look through just for little lizards. So how hard is that?
Oh man, and their habits too. It's just we're talking about like things like Timorensis and in the Timorensis family, these are tree loving lizards. Okay, so if somebody doesn't know how to look up you're talking about a dense canopy. And these animals are naturally shy. They like to stay hidden. They know how to be on the other side of a tree when an animal's hunting them or looking for them. They know how to err on the side of caution. They don't need to stare at you when they have a hollow log in their range to go hide into. If you're in the area, it's in the hollow log. So how much are we not even seeing that's out there?
Right.
Man, I could go on a big old rant with my thoughts on all this, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot to be seen. There's a lot to be done out there. I think there's a lot more, not only different species, but different subspecies and different looks to animals that we just don't have. If any of you guys follow the Indonesian guys, sometimes you see like these water monitors or Indicus, Dorianus, that, you know.
Yeah.
I was telling Kai about a black and white, like Dorianus looking animal. I mean, these animals exist out there, or even that sweet looking orange pastel Dorianus that you have in your possession at the moment. I mean, that thing's unreal.
And that thing came in looking 100% different than what it does now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even bought it if you know. I mean, I obviously I didn't, but originally, but now it's like I'm kicking myself in the foot for not in the first place, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you just don't know. Things look differently, different stages.
And I think that's incredible. So you have like your classic looking like Dorianus that's black with these little yellow spots and a blue tail as a baby. And then a few months down the road, you have an animal that looks something totally different. How do we know? We don't have the knowledge out there. No one's worked with them to that degree to say, okay, this one from this area is going to turn out like this. We're starting to, but I mean, anyways, I don't want to talk too much about that because I have some interest in Dorianus. So I don't want to get people all jacked up and doing their own internet searches. Wait till I'm done. Then you guys can.
Yeah.
But anyways, you know, I'm getting off topic, Kai. We were supposed to be talking about Tristis, and here I am.
It's all right. We're always off topic as long as it's monitor related. It's all good, right? Yeah.
But I guess.
Go ahead.
Oh no! I was just gonna get talking about Tristis again. So finish up what you were gonna say.
Oh no. I think if anybody were to have questions regarding Tristis, I'm only very limited with the Tristis stuff. Alan would be able to help you out much more with them and anything like that. And there's a little bit more to really go over too with the Tristis stuff. I myself I can only share a limited amount,
Yeah. Well, I would say like my approach with them and my approach with all dwarf monitors is similar, especially with babies. I like very simplistic setups. Okay, that is so you can monitor your animal, so that your animal can also monitor you. And with something so small and like Kai pointed out with the pencil thin tails, it's very nice to be able to look into a cage and know the status of your animal. If you need to add in a little more food, then you can do so. If your animal needs to be able to find food, if it's a very basic setup, have something like a stack under the basking light so that your temperatures can get high enough in the 130s or so on the top, and then it can choose a thermal gradient while staying hidden. Okay. I like to, even on the top of my stack, put an extra piece of bark so that the animal can actually stay hidden right there. It can peek out a little bit. And I do that for a lot of the dwarf monitors. So they can reach ultra high temps if they want to, while still having that retreat right next to them. Or they can peek a foot out, a head out, just something until they're more comfortable and to come all the way out and take care of what they need to. But I also like to put like a dish of roaches on so next to the stack, but not directly near the basking light, somewhere where I don't need to be able to necessarily look in and see the roaches right in front of me. So if I have a thermal gradient stack of some sort, I can put the roaches kind of on the back side of it if it's just in a little dish, and dig a little hole in whatever maybe substrate I have in there to kind of make it more flush with the ground. This allows the animal to come out of the stack, stay hidden kind of on the backside, eat its fill, go back into the stack with relatively staying hidden the whole time. I think a lot of times we want to rush seeing our animals and interacting with our animals, when I think it's so much more important to establish a good month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months of the animal getting used to your routine before you ever even touch that animal. We want to rush things sometimes, and all you do is you end up stressing out the animal and making it so they're not safe. And if you did something like you bought a group of, let's say, 3 Tristis, 4 Tristis, they're going to establish their own pecking order, and those weaker animals, if you put that kind of stress on them, they're going to start to fail sometimes. So to avoid all that, make sure there's plenty of food, the animal feels safe. It's going to be with you for a long time. You're going to have plenty of time to establish those bonds and to get your hands on that animal if it wants you to. But support that animal. Let it get some good size on it. Let it establish like a feeding pattern, a daily routine with you. And then so I treat, like I was saying, the dwarf monitor is very similar. I will use paper towels sometimes at first. I don't always, but I have no problem using paper towels and spraying them down. Now, when I'm using paper towels, I'll spray 3 or 4 times a day. And then I will also let it dry out. I don't like animals sitting on moisture. Now, you can have a spot in that cage where you keep something purposely moist and it'll stay moist for the day. I've even seen some guys with the paper towel approach. They will take a regular hand towel, and they'll get it wet, put it in water, wring it out, and put it somewhere in the cage where that hand towel will stay about 85 degrees, and the babies will just burrow into that hand towel. And so every day you can just take it out, make sure there's no babies in it, throw it in the wash, grab another hand towel, and it provides a humid hide for the babies. And while the rest of the cage can dry out and stay dry, they have access to that to burrow in. That way you're not getting the problems that sometimes associated with too much humidity. Tristis toes and tail tips are so thin, so fragile, even more so than baby Ackies. So it's important to be able to let your animal have choices. Don't keep them too humid. Don't keep them too dry either. But if you have those choices where the animals can get to what they need to, believe me, they will treat you good. And then food for baby Tristis, they like to chase things, but they do like to stay hidden. I watch for little poops, basically, on the basking spot. If I'm seeing good amount of poops, I know that they're eating. I know that things are going well. They're getting the nutrients in. And then it's also important to gut load your feeders, especially for growing babies. I have no problem also using chopped pinks. I will use them weekly, a few times a week, along with bugs. People will say what they will say about that, but hey, I have no issue with it. My animals are growing great. They thrive, and they're very healthy. They develop very good appetites. They know how to eat out of a dish. They know how to chase crickets around. They're very comfortable with whatever I need to feed them, because there have been times, where there's been a cricket shortage, superworm shortage, roach shortage, and it's nice to expose them to different things. And monitors are very site oriented, so it's easy with crickets and Kai, with the grasshoppers. but it's also good to have it in your back pocket where you can put something in a dish and they know how to get to it. They know how to eat from that.
Yeah, mine do a little bit better with both around.
Yeah.
Some aren't really hip to chasing the grasshoppers and crickets, but they'll eat like egg and mice pieces out of a little dish, you know.
Oh, yeah.
As long as they ate, that's all I care about.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I care about. I mean, I'm not gonna feed it a rodent mouse diet 24/7 and every day or anything like that, but I'm just going to bounce between maybe 3 or 4 different things. I bounce between egg, chicks, mice,
Mm-hmm.
and grasshoppers. That's what I bounce between. Um, and it really just depends on what I have most of, and kind of giving a balance between all 4 of the things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make your life too complicated and get like 10 different things that you gotta house, store, feed, do whatever to. Just keep it simple, you know, a few things.
Yeah. So if you're keeping, just a few babies, know around town a couple places you can get crickets, but when you get them a day early. Don't run out and then you need them. You're already a day behind. Get your crickets a little bit early. Give them some um, good nutrients. I like to use a lot of sliced carrots. I don't use a lot of potatoes. I will throw sometimes some berries in, oranges, and then usually I still have like I've been using mostly vegetables for the water source. I did pick up some water crystals just in case I need to use them, but good veggies, and then I use some bran flakes or chick feed just as a dry food source, and get that good nutrients into your bugs first, and then you'll see it in your babies. They grow tremendously fast, and I've been able to see it now when you have good fed feeder bugs. It goes right into your animal, and it shows. It shows not only in their growth rate, but in their attitude, um, how they're moving around, running around, and the overall animal. But then also, I supplement with calcium and D3. We've had some guests on that just like calcium. Find one that works for you. I use the Zoo Med stuff. Kai, I think you mentioned you use mineral, right?
Yeah, I use mineral. I have the D3, and then I have without the D3. I use the D3 much more often, even if
Yeah.
I'm using um, calcium within the diet. If I'm already, yeah, I use the without D3 maybe once a month or so, but I use the other ones all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing, for babies, just I was thinking, my mind's on the crickets. You can use a water dish, but I think Zoomed or somebody, they make these really nice like shallow water dishes. If you want to go buy something that kind of have some texture to them and a little ramp in and out. I actually like using those, even though you're going to pay $4.99, $6.99 for something like that. That might be unnecessary. The reason I like them is I don't worry about the animal really drowning or anything like that, but crickets will kill themselves in a regular water dish, and I hate seeing a dish full of just drowned crickets, and it gets this like brown tint to it and just looks nasty. Um,
Yeah.
so I like to save myself the hassle now with the babies. Now the babies do run through it, but we're talking maybe a quarter inch of water, and I just go through real quick and just I I fill up new water into them. I let the water that's in there kind of splash out. Sometimes I just stick my finger in there and stir it up, get the dirt out, and it's just part of the daily routine. A lot of times in a dwarf monitor cage, though, your temperatures are so hot that water that spills out is going to dry out anyway, especially if you have some decent ventilation. So that's just the way I do it, and I like that the crickets that I put in there stay alive and they're not drowning in a water bowl somewhere. So um, let's see. If I'm not raising like the Tristis I have right now, I didn't set them up on paper towels. They have about 4 to 5 inches of a substrate base, And then the top of the substrate base, I covered with just some leaves that I have out in the yard. They're oak leaves, not your big one, like your smaller oak leaves, and your like sphagnum moss. And then what I've done is I've stacked some stones, some thinner stones under the basking spot on one side. And then I've placed stacks of bark around the basking spot onto the basking spot. And then I have so at home, I use this system where it sounds like a lot, but it's a mini halogen on one side. We're talking a 2-foot Exoterra that's 18 inches tall. It's a 2-foot, I'm sorry, it's a Zilla mini halogen on one side and like a 60-watt ceramic heater on the other side. The ceramic heater stays on all the time, and I turn the mini halogen off at night, and it sounds like a lot of heat. It does put a lot of heat into the room. However, with just the way that our air conditioner runs and keeping things at room temperature, it actually keeps the cage itself about 80 to 85 degrees in the ambience. There's always heat that they can get to. They do stack up under the ceramic heater at night. That's where you'll find them. In the daytime, I usually find them in and around the mini halogen. And then what I do is, because there's so much heat and I do have good ventilation on the top of that cage, is I will spray in the morning after I turn the lights on for a little bit, and I will spray in the evening about an hour before I turn off the lights. They always have water. And then that substrate base, that 4 or 5 inches, acts as a humidity bank, a moisture bank, along with the leaves kind of lock in the moisture to the soil. But then I can also spray the sphagnum moss that I've spread out in there. And it's just enough to hold moisture for a little bit. It soaks up what I spray into there. It makes the cage humid for a good hour or so, like those spikes. And for me, it's an awesome baby cage. I have no problem using that for almost any. I would not hesitate to use it for any of my baby monitors. It covers their needs, and then I dump in cricket. They have crickets and roaches pretty much all the time, so they can chase something. They can feed off of something in a bowl. Trying to think what else I set them up with. I think that's pretty standard for how I set them up. Now I talk about stacks. Right now I'm just using stacks of some stone pieces and oak bark, but you can use cork bark. You can use plywood, various things. You can use different pieces of slate. The only thing I would suggest is that you really secure your stones, if you're going to use stones, in a way that you're not going to crush your babies. If you have to go in there and move stuff around because you need to find them, have them in a way where you don't remove one and they all come tumbling down. Have them stacked in a system where you can remove the top one safely without putting any extra pressure on any corner of that stone, because that might be where your baby's hiding, if you choose to use that. And the reasons for that is stone is a great heat bank. When the lights hit it, it stores that energy, it stays warm for a long time, it radiates heat into the ground. So that's why I choose to use it in that situation. Plywood bark doesn't do that as well, or really at all, once you get into the dirt. So just different things to think about as you're setting up your babies. I'm guessing, Kai, that's pretty similar to what you've been doing with the Kimberleys. I know you give them those little hanging
they're just hanging ends. I don't use any floor setup at all for the dwarf Kimberleys. And even the mangroves, I've limited the floor heighting as much as possible, so everything is elevated. My things are just stacked. There's not really a ton of depth in the bedding at all, and I just keep moist paper towels for the first few weeks or so, and then once they've passed their first shed, seem to be doing really well, their belly buttons have all healed up, I then add some sandy soil. I don't use too much as far as I'd say I don't use too much as far as heavy rocks for any of the babies at all, just because of the falling and placement of them. I would essentially need to set them on something that's going to stay sturdy, and if they're against something, they can't be moved at all. But I just don't like really heavy objects with little babies.
Yeah.
I am one of those that kind of go into my enclosures a little bit more often than some other people might have. I just end up, looking for babies. I kind of, chin rub and feed them. I tongue feed them a little bit more. My imprinting is a little bit, I actually try to work with them a little bit so that way they're tame and they're workable.
Hmm.
So if I have to rotate and move slate rocks and stuff like that, they basically end up smashing something or even smashing my own finger or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything for me is lightweight wood. Um, I use plastic coated fencing type stuff, or I'll use that hammock thing, and I don't even use it in a hammock style the way it's supposed to. I just line it up against the wall so they have something to climb.
Yeah.
Um, and that for me gives them just enough to do and everything like that with everything going on. I don't use any of the floor soil stuff too much just because they go there right away and they end up getting bumblefoot or something like that from my improper ratios at the bottom if I happen to have them. So yeah, I don't put any of the babies on it just yet. I'm not really one to throw babies onto soil just right away. Yeah, it's just how I kind of do things, even if they're good eaters or whatnot, or the food is in a bowl. I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a little bit more maintenance. It is a little bit more work. But overall, you're gonna switch to soil. Don't be using paper towel just because we're using it. We're just doing it as they're hatching out. But
Right.
once they get to a point and they can actually do well and they're well started, and you seem like okay, adding soil's fine, then go ahead and do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then you do it just like how Alan explained with the sandy soil with the leaf litter on top. I put like banana leaves that basically take forever to break down.
Yeah.
I also use the oak leaves too. Maple leaves and other stuff like that just break down way too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they might be good to add to the soil if you're purposely trying to
Yeah.
reach a certain consistency, but like Kai said,
Right.
those maple leaves, they break down
They
quick.
add good color though when
Oh
you like when they're falling and you throw them in. Oh man, it makes the cage look like
oh
it's a
yeah.
whole different setup. Yeah.
It's fun picture
Um,
time.
yeah. Now the leaf litter, I once I do use it and I add the soil in and I add the leaf litter, I do notice the animals have different behavior
Hmm.
as 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 opposed to eating jumping grasshoppers or they're eating out of a bowl. They actually flush stuff through the leaf litter. Like if I throw in bugs and they land down there, or
Hmm.
there's just something that there for them to do. Yeah, I definitely see that there's interest in what they want to do down there. I just don't have it too wet down there at all.
Yeah, I think it's something we developed a knack for. So like I know what I'm looking for by sight and feel as far as moisture down there, but it's we say moisture and we think we have to see moisture. It's more like just this like
Wetness.
yeah, it's just barely just barely
Yeah.
enough in there.
I mean, again, I just saturate moist soil at the bottom or moist sandy soil, and then I have my thing where I just dump stuff on top of it, so that
And that's how
way,
you keep it dry, right?
yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
just can't touch it. Yeah, a
Yeah.
good so it's dry, but underneath I know what's down there, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's what I need to do. I just revamped most of my female nest bins, so yeah, I literally just did all this the other day. Ended up ended up having to move a bunch of soil, nest bins, making sure everything is good
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah.
I'm going to be messing around with some different. It's basically going to be a tote, but almost different coverings or maybe a different shell for nest bins that I kind of want to use. More aesthetically pleasing, I guess. For some
Yeah.
cages, not everyone. Some things I just need to be able to get in, get out, and it works. But
Yeah, I used to want to always make a nicer nest bin too. Like I have ideas, but I just don't like. I
yeah,
don't know the material and the time to do it, and the fact that it might not work
yeah,
when the bins have been working. So I'm not gonna try to change too much with what I got going on. So
yeah. No, I'm
yeah,
just at
yeah,
this point where it actually ties into this Tristis thing. So I guess I'll finish with talking some Tristis. Once you get your like babies, your monitor's going to grow at a great rate. I say Tristis could go from egg to egg just like Ackies could, probably in like 8 to 10 months. Wouldn't be a stretch. Now, overall size, Tristis do get bigger. Um, I have my I would say adult holdback pair. They're now in a 4 foot by 2 foot enclosure, and then my adult trio, are in a 6 foot enclosure. Um, Everything else is the same. I provide in the 6 foot enclosure. I provide two basking areas on the ends because and I put my nest box humidity area in the middle because with the two basking spots on the ends, it hits that nice, mid 85 degrees right in the middle there. And seems to work out for me just fine. And then I throw in, I keep them on those cocoa chips right now, and it's not a plug for that. It just works for me. I can dump water in them the way that the cocoa chips soak up some moisture. I can dump water in the bottom, and it keeps a certain level of humidity. They do have a pretty decent size water dish in there. I noticed that my Tristis, they don't drink when I spray them. They actually run when I spray them. They don't care for it too much. So how I choose to address their humidity needs is to make sure that I can go in every 2-3 days and just add a little water to their substrate, that cocoa blocks that soaks it up, and then they have an area. I say nest box. It's a pretty decent nest box that they have in there. There's a lot of room in there. All three of them could get in there together and dig around and have, plenty of room. But I put a lot of stacks of larger pieces of oak bark that fallen trees around here. I'll let them dry out for a year or so. I'll peel off the bark, and the larger pieces, some of it crumples. Those go in the baby cages. Um, but Tristis in their natural habitat, they will utilize trees. They'll utilize hollow logs, um, uh, bark stacks where they naturally fall. They live anywhere from like rock outcroppings to grasslands to like the wooded areas. So
yeah,
they're a great monitor when you have an idea that you want to set up a cage a certain way and then put an impressive looking animal in there. Tristis are great for that because their natural habitat spans so many different ranges. You can get away with um, putting them in whatever you want, really, and you can take some artistic privileges, I guess, in setting them up and how you want to do it. And you're gonna you're gonna do pretty well matching, some of their natural ranges in these areas. But they are animals that will use height. They are climbers. They do not shy away from it at all. They're curious animals. My male is out almost all the time. My female that is cycling, she's out about 50% of the time. The other female stays hidden, and she kind of has herself on a different schedule. Now, this is not necessarily specific to Tristis as much as I've noticed with trios. It's just sometimes how they they position themselves to use the cage I've given them, and they're out at different times and whatnot. They don't all compete at the same time. But there's been other times where all three are stacked up on top of each other, sitting under the basking spot, hanging out. But I would say, yes, you can get by with a single animal in a 4-foot enclosure. And the truth is you're not going to have a problem. You can interact with that animal. You can, once it's an adult and comfortable with you, you can add new furniture into that cage for stimulation, and you can have a very happy animal in that situation. But I think a 6-foot enclosure is much more realistic for an animal the Tristis size. And then what I'm planning on doing actually is very, very soon here, there's already some plans in the works, is I want to set them up in a way where I'm guessing the cage is probably going to be around 6 by 3 by 3 when it's finally outfitted and done. That's going to provide them a ton of floor space. Now, I can get away with that because I don't have the restrictions of door size and whatnot. But I'm going to take 2 of probably the holdbacks and the trio that I have now. They're both going to be in these 6-foot by 3-foot cages, one stacked on top of the other. And just kind of what I've been talking about, I'm going to meet their needs with, I'm going to aim for about 150-degree basking spot in 2 different areas. They are going to have both nest box, kind of like a built-in design that looks naturalistic. I'm doing this all for me at this point. I'm going to have fun with the kids. We're going to mess around with some of the products out there. And they will also have an area where it's more whole cage substrate nesting. They're going to have some vertical areas to get around in. And I like the Tristis, man. I think they're cool. They have some goofy habits. They're active enough. They're impressive enough. They fit that nice gap between, I would say, the Ackies and I would say the sand monitors in my experience, but I guess for you, Coyote, it'd be right around the size of your adult Indicus too. They're like that step for what we have available in the US. There's that step right between the Ackies and your mid-size monitor. So for the people out there that are looking for something like that, you want something that's got some size to it, that's impressive, but that's still manageable. Tristis are absolutely great. And I would not shy away from, if you have some, we tend to think like Kimberly rocks, we got to put in the Kimberly looking cage. If you're going to do one up, and Ackies, we got to put on rocks somewhere, like a rock outcropping to have a naturalistic looking cage, which isn't true. You could set them up as long as you meet their basics, kind of anything you wanted to. But with the Tristis, you can really play off of, what they'll actually use, because they use so much terrain over there that it's kind of sky's the limit. You can pick out your backgrounds, you can put your own little twists on things, and really probably see some cool behaviors from not only nesting and digging if you provide them large areas, but also climbing opportunities. And I think as things progress, I think Tristis are going to catch on a lot more. They're not as, I would still put it out there, they're not as like shockingly stunning as Kimberly rocks. Their qualities are a little more subtle, but then you will get those animals, and I've been able to produce some now that have that really nice like dark tail, black head, almost like the bluish spots in the middle. I would encourage you to check them out. If you haven't heard of them before, check out the Tristis. They're great, rewarding animals. They got some good size. And yeah, if you want to step up from Ackies, and you know what, I think the truth is, if you're getting into dwarf monitors, you're probably gonna be looking at all
Tristis
of them.
are okay, man. Tristis are I would say on the line of still a really manageable lizard. I think people would just have to, I would say, realize that they're not like Ackies. I
Right.
mean, in a way, taking care of them is very similar, but um, I'd say that they're so much more faster than what people are used to. Like people are kind of used to the. I wouldn't say they're exactly dopey, but they're Ackies aren't like fast and swift like the Tristis are.
True. Yeah.
So you'd have to really, get that aware in your system, within your setup and how you're going to be approaching them. It's not like a thing that you can just grab out and hold out in your hand in the open. An Aki, yeah, it's not going to be able to dart off that fast, and they're kind of more clunky, right?
Yep.
But the Tristis, you would have to hold it out in the open in a bin. That's because you're trying to really, once it darts off, it's just gonna go pew and take off on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I just well, hope you guys enjoyed the Tristis talk.
Oh
We
yeah.
can definitely add more onto this if you guys happen to have any questions.
Yeah, hit me up. There's some good breeders out there for Tristis. I'll plug them too, because there's actually not that many people working with them. Rare Earth, Brandon over there produces some fantastic animals, of course. I believe Doug Price is still working with his group, but good luck trying to get a hold of him. um, I'm working with some, and there's JCM Reptiles who you can check
Yes,
out.
Jonathan.
Yep. And then
Um,
Ian from Boogie Down. I'd say
yeah,
Ian or Ian. Boogie Down Reptiles. He works with some and produces some great animals as well. And there's a few other people I expect that should be having their first round of clutches here very soon. Um, Matt Kosman, I'm guessing he's going to get it going here real soon. He's got some great looking animals. So, yeah, get out there, check them out. They go fast, I will say that. So if you're interested in them, reach out to people and try to maybe get on a list if you can, because they do go quick.
yeah,
And I've had some people get upset because as they're talking about figuring it out, it's like another person
they're
came in.
selling.
And, yeah, I was like, okay, I'll take them, and
Yeah.
happens. But okay, yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Kai, you got anything last minute that you want to throw out there?
No, I would really appreciate your guys' feedback. I get like probably messages every day or several times a week. And you guys are giving us, I mean, shoot, what we love to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what we want is if you guys happen to have any questions regarding your current animals, or if you're having issues or things like that, we can either have you on, or we can have you just send us questions and we'll basically read them off like a questionnaire type deal.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you very much for tuning in and everything like that.
Yeah. And guys, check out MPR, Morelia Python Radio Network. Check out the different podcasts they have available. I've been really digging, like I said, NPR, they just had Mike on talking monitors, which is great. Reptile Fight Club, I've been having a blast listening to, kind of talking about some of the politics in the hobby and whatnot. I never miss an episode of Carpets and Coffee. My good buddy Riley and Lucas over there, and Eric putting out some great material. And it's fun just, you get into these guys' personalities and what they're doing a little bit. It's fine. It's fun to kind of hang out and take part in other reptile people. And there's a few other ones out there. So check them out. Go on to their page if you want to support them. There's a Patreon you can find. And then, of course, support USARC. If you haven't heard of them before, they protect our rights to keep these amazing animals. So the more that we can assist them in helping us, the better it's going to be for our future and keeping these wonderful pets. So, all right, we'll wrap it up. Kai, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you guys have a good one. Thank you guys for tuning in.